Hello, everyone. My name is Atin Gupta. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Countable. Today, we're going to talk about outsourcing. In 2020, 4.35 million new businesses applications were submitted. That tells us something in terms of where our industry is going and where businesses are going in general. 82% of the businesses are looking for advisory services from accountants. They're looking for CPAs to come on the table and really talk about their problems and solving their problems. It doesn't mean that they're not interested in compliance work, but they're looking for something more than compliance. There's a 7% drop in CPA candidates as per the Journal of Accountancy in 2019. There's a 6% drop in newly licensed CPAs. And the last one that surprised me the most, by 2023, 75% of the members will reach their retirement age. Now, I know we all don't want to retire. 65 is not the new norm, and we could probably push it by another 10 years, maybe. But it's coming faster than we can imagine. And 75% is still a pretty big number. This video is not about saying outsourcing is the solution. This video is about looking into some of the areas what cost us or which causes us today not to look into it more deeply and realize that whether that is one of the potential resources that we can use as we're solving the problem as we go about in the industry. In the professional services sector, we're buying time and we're selling time in a meaningful way. We're adding our value and resources and giving the value proposition to our clients by getting in front of them, by being their trusted business advisors. The compliance work usually end up taking a lot of our time. And sometimes it's not something that you want to do all the time. So it'll be interesting to look at some of the areas and options that are available and just hear from the expert himself. So today's speaker is a co-founder at Pyrian Global. He's got 20 plus years in global assurance, audit and accounting services work. He led his offshore assurance practice of EY North America for almost a decade. It was a team of about 1,500 professionals, and he was awarded the EY Global Golden Beam Transformation Champion Award and Emerging Leader Award. Initial 8 years of his career was with PwC and a private equity firm. He's a CA by background and has been known as a transformation champion. He's a leading expert in offshore industry. And a very close friend, and I'd like to introduce you to Abhishek Gupta.
Thanks a lot, Atin, for this warm welcome and a kind of such an intriguing sharing of my experiences with the audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you here. And I don't know if you were listening in the background. I would love to get your thoughts around outsourcing and how you see outsourcing sitting on a completely different side of the border. But before we get into that, let's try and get to know you a little bit, if you don't mind. Let's do a quick rapid fire. And rapid fire means rapid fire. We're going to keep the answers very, very short. So what keeps you up at night in terms of work?
My clients, considering that I serve North America as a market. So majority of my client conversations happens at night, India time. That's interesting. The second thing is that probably if I have to kind of reflect back, my brain functionality goes at least 2 times in the night, which is very different in comparison to how we visualize things that you have to win a 5 a.m. club. But yes, majority of my business and my people strategy is being thought through in the later part of the day. So that keeps me up till late in the night.
Okay. And if you had 25 hours a day, how would you use that extra time?
I'm not a fitness freak. It's always on my wish list to kind of keep on carving, to kind of carve out some time to kind of focus on my fitness. I think probably that additional hour is the one which I would spend on my fitness and would not find any additional excuses not to do that.
And the third one, the last one, name your 3 most important core values in life.
I think the first core value which I believe or I think is that one needs to believe in themselves. So you need to kind of believe that probably you are one of the unique persons on this earth and you have got that power and charisma to kind of do that transformation. So that is something which probably one has to kind of have that kind of a confidence. The second thing is that you need to love what you're doing. So, and till time you're not loving what you're doing, you will not be able to kind of be satisfied in terms of what exactly you perform. And the third thing which I say is that you need to kind of keep on exploring for something new every day. Every day you need to kind of keep on challenging yourselves that what is something different I can bring it out as a purpose for myself, and keep on challenging the status quo. So these are three things which I kind of lay down as a principle for myself, can be defined as a core values for me.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's been, when I left the firm, the biggest one for me was be the change you want to see. For a very long period of time, I was always looking for a change. It's like, why are we not changing the way we're doing things? And it hasn't changed. It hasn't changed. And one of the Gandhi's books said, be the change you want to see. And it resonated significantly, among other things. And that was probably the foundation of what we do and how we do today. So thank you for sharing. It does resonate very well with our core values as well. So, just to, you and I, whenever we talked in the past, it was always about how do we really position in the market and what is the best way to really bring things out in the light. There's a lot of positive and negative connotations around outsourcing. There's a lot of miscommunication in terms of what outsourcing is. And how are people perceiving it? How do we see local resources, global resources with a local touch in some way? I call it, I love the word global. So the question back to you is, what is your perspective on outsourcing? When you think about outsourcing as a person who is sitting on the other side of the world and servicing the clients in a completely different community, how are you looking at it over the course and what has changed for you?
Outsourcing has there has been a kind of paradigm shift in terms of how the outsourcing was being perceived a few years back and how it has to be taken now. About a couple of decades back, when this entire outsourcing thing started, the main objective was to kind of get something more on a cost arbitrage, where you can get cheap or so-called resources from different parts of the world, where you don't have to kind of spend more. However, I think in the last couple of years, since the time when this entire technology advancement has happened, there has been a significant shift in terms of how now the organizations are perceiving and viewing outsourcing. There has been a shift from profit and loss to the value and purpose, and how we bring that value and purpose to our clients. So I think this is how I would define that the outsourcing has completely shifted in the last couple of years. And this is where even the outsourcing firms have to kind of really work very closely with the organizations on their overall vision, their purpose, and kind of aligning themselves into the similar pedigree.
That's great. And what I'm hearing from you is that there used to be a lot of emphasis on saying, I need a cheaper resource and a faster resource. Let's go get in wherever we can get our hands on. And then people jump in and they realize, well, they kind of don't speak our language. I don't know if the security is there or not. And a whole bunch of other problems start to rise up and everything. Can you speak to some of those challenges that you categorize as some of the challenges that are perceived by the clients, and how do you really address them?
Right. I think there are some common challenges, or I would rather define it as perceived barriers or myths, which are quite prevalent as part of this industry when you have to kind of go and get your work outsourced. So some of the things which comes top of my head are that, am I too small to kind of utilize an outsourcing organization? Or is it something which is only meant for the bigger organization? Mm-hmm. The second thing is that how I am going to kind of really secure my data when I'm sending it across a few miles away. The third thing which comes out is that if I have to kind of spend so much time in laying down instructions and coordinating with these outsourcing companies or the third-party service providers, might as well I can spend that time and kind of do the stuff on my own. There is also one of the very prevalent challenge which keeps on coming is that the continuity of resources, specifically assurance in the advisory world, wherein you need to kind of provide consistency to the clients in terms of resourcing, in terms of the knowledge of the client. And that is where a lot of organizations have got that kind of a challenge, whether the outsourcing company can really provide me the continuity. Some of the logistical challenges are specifically in terms of the time zone, that how we are going to meet the time zone difference. Is it going to be something that's going to be viable for us or not? And then whether whether my outsourcing company has got that understanding about the cultural diversity, how well they are going to be on the communication side, and so on, and whether that outsourcing company can bring the real specialization which is required for my respective market and for my respective clients.
Right.
So I think these are few of the common perceived challenges which keeps on coming across for us. I'm sure that for multiple other outsourcing companies as well. But typically, these are the things which at least I have experienced in my life, where the organizations have kind of taken a pause and thought through that, is it going to work for me or not?
Yeah. And before you jump into the your perspective on what are some of the challenges and how you see them and how you solve them, I think I like to add a few things there, which is very interesting, because when we look at on the North American side, and I was with a larger firm and I was also with a smaller firm, I went through the whole process of starting, going through the pain points, and then really becoming integral part of our team. And after that, it was almost impossible not to have it. So it was, I get to see over the course of time the full shift of how we were contemplating if it's even going to work for us as an entity, go to a point where I don't think we can actually function as an entity without having that resource. Now, I understand that I was with a larger organization, so it sometimes make it difficult. But with the smaller entities as well, a few of the folks who've been very close friends, they've had the opportunity to experience this in their world, and the experience has been almost identical. So there are pain points for sure. Everything that you mentioned is an extremely well-defined and well-documented pain point, and yet people are still using it. And yet people keep looking out for it. QuickBooks has a live functionality that says you can have your outsource accounts. I'm sure they're not servicing out of North America for the most part. It's a mix of both. So from your perspective, what is it that's working? Like, going from not knowing anything about it and except reading on the internet and say, these are our challenges, I don't think this is going to work, I don't think we should go down the path, versus how do you kind of hop through those challenges to get to a point that now you have a better understanding and knowledge about how it works? Can you shed some light on that?
Yeah, I think so. Then coming back to the first question, where how we can kind of really overcome these perceived barriers or myths. If I have to kind of really list down or kind of really concise this broader list of challenges into two or three major challenges. So I think one of the thing is that a lot of organizations still views the outsourcing companies or the service providers as a third-party service provider. They don't see them as an extended team. The second thing which I believe is that still when the organization is picking up the outsourcing partner, their decisions are majorly driven by cost arbitrage rather than the talent arbitrage. And the third thing is the logistical aspects, which we kind of talked about in terms of the time zones, the communication, talent, cultural diversity, data privacy, and so on. So I think these are the things which definitely need emphasis from both the sides in terms of how it needs to be worked upon. And if I have to kind of address these into very simpler format, the first thing which comes is the extended teaming. It's a big mindset shift. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to extended teaming, it's a mindset shift which requires for the clients and for the CPA firms in the North America to kind of see and start utilizing their outsourcing partner as an extended team, as if that other person is not sitting, say, 50 miles away, that person is sitting, say, 10,000 miles away. These are some of the perceived challenges. But if I have to kind of really boil down these perceived challenges into, or the perceived barriers into three biggest bottlenecks. The first thing which comes to my mind is that a lot of times the organizations view their third-party service providers as a black box, wherein they can get some information, the information can be processed, and you can kind of get an output. However, if somebody wants to have a real successful relationship in this entire outsourcing world, they have to start visualizing their service providers as an extended team. When I say extended team, it means that it is like your own team member who is sitting in a Washington, DC, if you are in New York. But instead of kind of sitting in a DC, they might be sitting in India, they might be sitting in Philippines or somewhere else. So it hardly makes a difference. And I think the last 1.5 years has really contributed well for all of us to kind of have that kind of a shift where we can kind of really work in this virtual environment. So that is where I would like to bring that perspective of extended teaming. The second thing, which I would also like to kind of emphasize, is on the logistical aspects, where we kind of talk about the communication, the talent, time zone differences, and so on. I think these are the things where one needs to kind of have a very candid conversation with their outsourcing partner, get a kind of a deeper understanding about the framework under which your outsourcing partner operates. Does that outsourcing partner brings the entire protocols around data privacy? Does the outsourcing partner has got the right team in place? Does the outsourcing partner kind of understands the time zone differences, and they also understands your market in terms of how they need to kind of operate? And the third, and not the least, is the confusion where a lot of organizations tends to make mistakes or kind of tends to take wrong decisions is when they are being carried away with the cost arbitrage rather than being a talent arbitrage. So I would like to kind of really emphasize over here is that once you are kind of getting for your outsourcing partner, figure it out how well you need to kind of get the right talent for your jobs and for your clients, instead of kind of only focusing on cost. Because at times what happens is that when you get into this market, you can go to one partner who will offer you an X dollar, the other partner can offer you X minus $5, and that is where you will only get into a situation where your decision will be driven by cost rather than by talent. So these are the three things which I would like to kind of focus and say that if we are able to kind of boil down our problems or our perceived barriers into these three buckets, and the respective solutioning can be done around these three things, I think we can be in a better situation.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you so much for that. This is really interesting. When you're talking, few different questions are coming to mind, and maybe we can address those questions. Thinking of it as somebody who doesn't know anything about outsourcing, and I'm just coming out as a firm out of North America, and the first thing that becomes overwhelming is, where do I go? What do I look at? And who do I reach out to? Just like there's an option, there's probably a same type of questions that come up of somebody who's servicing outside of India or Philippines or anywhere else, and looking and saying, how do I get my knowledge base or my practice out to individuals or folks in North America? How do you market ourselves? So we're also looking as a firm here on this side. It says, who do I pick? There's just so many of them. Once you start looking and putting a word, and then is there any criteria that you have that there's a non-negotiables that people should always look for before they get into this conversation about those three particular aspects that you talked about, which might require a bit more understanding and conversation back and forth? So do you have any thoughts around, what is the best starting point and what are some of the non-negotiables?
The first and the foremost thing is the knowledge. So the leadership and the management team of your outsourcing partner should have the relevant experience in audits and reviews, the applicable gaps for your respective countries, technical accounting, accounting positions, having an understanding about the overall quality oversight from the different regulators, and so on. The second is the talent. The outsourcing partner should have a kind of a very clear understanding about the kind of a talent, what they need to kind of engage, and how they want to kind of allocate the talent on that particular client. So what is their hiring strategy? What is their training strategy? That is something which you need to kind of get an understanding about. Third is the market, where you need to kind of really understand about the overall market understanding of your outsourcing partner. Do they really understand the North American market? Do they really understand whether it is a US market or how Canadian markets and how Canadian clients operates? The fourth point is on culture and communication. So the team which is being allocated by outsourcing partners should be absolutely strong in terms of communication, both written and oral. And their team also has got a very in-depth experience about the cultural diversity between the two countries. So they should understand how the clients and the people in North America work, what is the kind of a format which they operate, what are the protocols under which they work, and so on, so that they can bring that kind of a flavor and when the teams in the North America are working with their outsourcing partner, they really don't see a big gap or a big difference in terms of from an adjustment standpoint.
Right.
The fifth point, Atin, which I would like to kind of focus over here is risk and compliance. I think for me, again, one of the most critical aspect that how strong is that outsourcing partner in terms of their overall protocols around data privacy. Is that firm being compliant with a SOC 1 and a SOC 2? Are they following any kind of a compliances, whether that is GDPR compliances or whether their internal policies are strong enough for the data protection and so on. So go a little deeper into that, get an understanding about the risk and the compliance, followed by your outsourcing partner. And then technology. I think this is again one of the most critical areas where you also need to kind of understand that how adequately that partner is being equipped with that latest technology, wherein they can share, exchange, and transfer information. Have an understanding about RPAs, the artificial intelligence backed up solutions, what they can bring it on board to kind of increase the overall efficiency and effectiveness in the client service delivery. So I think if we have to kind of really think through, these are the few points which I would say that these are the must-haves, and these should be part of your checklist when you're doing a due diligence for the partner to be engaged with.
Sometimes these information are not really readily available on the internet or the website, or when you type in, it doesn't come up. And now you are trying to talk to 5 different resource individuals and all kinds of different people coming on the table and trying to present information in a meaningful way. Like, can we further narrow it down and say, like, these are the things and these are the points that you should be looking out for when you're positioning it before you get into costing or before you get into testing it out and collaborating it?
So yeah, I understand that probably a lot of organizations would not have been kind of been smart enough to kind of put it on the website. But yes, when as an organization, if you are inviting somebody as an outsourcing partner to kind of make their presentation or kind of inviting somebody for orals. So as an organization, they should be able to kind of bring out these 5 things very clearly as part of their presentation. So if I have to kind of reflect and say that what we do when we go to the clients, the first thing which we talk about to the clients is our leadership and our management. And when we kind of talk about our leadership, what kind of an experience which they bring on board. The second thing which we kind of talk about is our talent, what and how we hire talent. And we kind of break down our talent into all different categories, starting from staff to senior to manager. And what is the hiring process which we kind of follow to kind of hire each of these different levels? What are the trainings which these different levels undergo, both on the technical side, on the non-technical side, so that we kind of give a complete holistic view to our prospective client in terms of how their entire landscape of the talent which will look like. Mm-hmm. The third thing is the data privacy. So we kind of talk heavily on data privacy in terms of our internal certifications, the certifications which we have got from a compliance standpoint, and how we kind of provide the overall secured platform of data to travel between the client side and our people, and how we kind of manage the internal privacy in the environment where people are majorly work from home. So this is also one of the critical elements which you have to kind of understand, that how well as an organization are you prepared for your people to kind of work from home and still kind of ensuring that there cannot be any kind of a data leakages. Then we kind of really go into our tech stack. So we kind of come out with our tech stack, that these are the different elements on which we already have got our in-house tools, whether it is on analytics, whether it is on artificial intelligence, and so on. And these are the additional technology platforms on which we are associated with the third parties to kind of bring any kind of a support services to your extended clients.
Right.
Then we kind of land up into the services where we kind of talk about that these are the services what we render under the assurance and advisory umbrella. And we hardly kind of talk about cost. Cost becomes incidental or a derivative after this conversation.
Okay. If there's like you said, if there's a right fit from a team perspective, then it's no different than hiring a team resource. We're going to shift gear. Somebody's already your client, and now they have problems. They're like, you said you're going to bring us a lot of resources on the table, and you're going to be able to ramp up very quickly, and you're going to be able to scale and give me another 10 resources if I need it, and all those things. And it's not happening the way it's happening. How do you kind of deal with that kind of scenario?
It's not a unique problem. Then I think it happens almost quite regularly with a lot of other organizations. And at times it happens with us as well, wherein the client comes and suddenly says that they have kind of won a big engagement or a big client, and they suddenly need 20 people from our end. So I think we have been very clear in our communication with all our prospective clients and even our existing clients that for us to kind of add on resources, it takes us a window of at least a month to 2 months, depending on the skill set and the competency of the resource, what you're looking for. We don't kind of carry a big bench. Yes, we kind of carry about a 5% bench, but we don't carry a kind of a big bench to kind of accommodate a demand for 20, 30 people. So I think that message is loud and clear to our clients. And this is where majority of the outsourcing firms fails, because of the fact that if the client comes to you and says that, okay, I need 20 resources and I need them now. And then these outsourcing firms, what they do is that they start knocking the doors of the other firms which are there in that particular country and start kind of doing the subcontracting of the people from there. Mm-hmm. And doing this entire subcontractual stuff, they only end up in achieving one thing, which is providing resources. But on the flip side, there is a big compromise which happens in the entire quality which is being delivered, the communication, and the overall trust and the confidence of the client starts shaking from there. Right. And I think this is where at least we as an organization are very clear that we don't run behind such scenarios. In case if for the sake of losing out of business for those particular 20 resources, we kind of raise our hands and say that, yes, we are up and ready to kind of provide support, but it will take time for us to kind of provide you required and legitimate quality.
Right. Okay. Okay, that's it's understandable, and it also has a security threat to it too. If you're subcontracting it, sometimes it could potentially get you in a situation where you don't have the right security standards that you like to meet, because you're putting yourself out there as a contractor rather than taking the ownership of someone. Yeah, I get that.
I think you picked up very well. In fact, these firms don't even ensure that they provide those subcontractors any secured laptops from their own inventory. So they ask the subcontractors to kind of use their own laptops, their own machines, and that is where the entire data privacy is being compromised.
Yeah, we just have to be mindful that there are all sorts of individuals who are trying to make a living by providing these type of resources. And the purpose of this, just for our audience, when you're reaching out, you have no idea who you're reaching out and what their capabilities are. So I've personally have asked for not one or two, but more than 5 or 10 reference checks, and have personal video calls to show us and walk us through the process, because it is a bit of a concern when you're trying to outsource to a completely different entity. And it's good to get those referrals out in North America as to what type of firms they're servicing in North America and have the experience and understanding of it. So hopefully that addresses that particular concern, but I do hear you loud and clear. From an outsourcing perspective, I believe, just to kind of share a thought at this point, I believe that I've always said in North America, there is going to be a challenge in wrapping up resources. As much as people like this local community culture connection fit, we want to have people who connect with our clients, who connect with our individuals better. And I usually say that I believe down the line, we're gonna be in a situation, if we're not already, that everybody in North America should be a reviewer, not a doer. There should not be any preparers. And all the preparers are either automated or in some capacity outsourced, where the leverage of value add could come in play, right? And the value, I use the word value add, it's not because you have to look for a cheaper resource, but you have to look for the right resource who can still make meaningful value proposition for themselves by delivering that value. But at the same time, there is a differential in terms of economic inflation or any reasons that there is still value proposition, the bottom line productivity and profitability. And based on that, that's where Countable was formed. We wanted to automate the work, and then even further automation, we wanted to eventually bring in an outsourcing platform that allows people to be able to further reduce their cost and bring in a better team and scalable team, even in a smaller capacity. So it seems like, from my perspective, if I just personally look at the opinion, the world is going to expand, and it's no longer Canada or US being a small community, or UK, Australia, New Zealand, so on and so forth. It's just one world, one resources, tap into it, and it will automatically start. The education is changing it significantly. Adam, do you have any thoughts around that? This is purely just thought sharing at this point. Do you have any thoughts around that? Something different, similar, anything you like to share?
Yeah, I think it's pretty deep, Atin. So now, if I kind of look back into our clients, the clients are kind of expecting very, very different kind of an output from the consultants. So they're not viewing us as auditors, or they're not viewing us as accountants. They're rather looking at us as advisors. So when the client starts looking at you as an advisor rather than as an auditor, it kind of adds additional responsibility on us, because yes, we are, as an auditor, we need to kind of make sure that we are kind of doing our job. We are making sure that at least all the compliances and stuff has been done. Apart from that, we need to be the business advisor to the client, where we have to say that how optimally the person can kind of run the business, and how effectively they can kind of maximize their profits. So I think this isn't so-called said, unsaid expectations which are built up in the profession, where the clients are not now expecting these things from the consultants. So it kind of becomes more imperative for them to kind of see that how well they can kind of shift some of the regular routine audit areas or accounting areas to a third party, or the outsourcing company, where they can actually do this stuff for them. And they can kind of really focus on the complex areas and can really provide value to their clients. I think this is the entire framework which the firm or which the clients have to kind of structure it out to kind of make themselves more effective in front of their real clients.
Right. Great. Wow. Well, I think we can go on talking about everything and anything for a very long period of time when it comes to these things. I've had a chance and opportunity to live on both sides of the world. So I get to experience the environment that you live in, and I get to experience for over a decade environment that I live in. I believe holistically that we have to keep our minds, eyes, and ears open, and to opportunity to do new ways of doing things, and not be afraid of staying out of our comfort zone at all times. We have to try different things. And I think people are, the COVID kind of made it a little bit more progressive, but digital transformation is happening faster than ever. And I think people are open to it. So if anything, hopefully this will give them a little bit more light into, how two sides of the world are thinking and doing. I mean, I didn't feel a difference of any conversational challenge or cultural challenge. And if you are providing that kind of pass on knowledge and everything, then I would believe that there would be a really good resources, if it isn't already down the line, and it bridges that gap of communication more and more and more. And so thank you so much, Abhishek. This has been really, really wonderful. Any last thoughts that you want to share to our audience, share with our audience? That'd be great.
It's all about trust and confidence, and the trust and confidence can only be built up when you kind of get engaged with the right partner. As I'm saying, selecting a right partner is important, but on the other side, the change in mindset is equally important, where you and your team also need to kind of really understand that how to kind of effectively work with that outsourcing partner. So if I have to kind of really put down into 2 or 3 broader themes, the first thing which comes to my mind is there has to be a very clear alignment of your vision and your purpose with your outsourcing partner, and your outsourcing partner should be smart enough to kind of really understand your vision and purpose, and can kind of really articulate the segue which they need to kind of work on. The outsourcing partner has to be absolutely intelligent. They have to be resourceful, and they have to be digitally driven to provide you the right support and right services. And it is an underlying fact that they have to kind of bring the global and subject matter expertise. So these are the things which I would like to kind of really sum it up, basis our entire conversation and the questions which you kind of asked me.
Wonderful. Like I said, you're bang on right on everything. There's not a single thing that I would change. I 100% agree with what you said. I've had similar experiences by looking at both sides of the spectrum, where I've had a scenario where I had to fight and get the information versus where it come in very easy and smooth, and it was no smooth sailing in terms of thinking of it as an extended team members. The processes are already there. All you have to do is just tweak our processes with their processes, and it almost starts to feel like a puzzle fitting in very nicely. If it's not aligned, and then you'll start to struggle and try to put that piece together, and it doesn't work at times for the most of the time, actually. So thank you so much again, Abhishek. This was really, really, really wonderful. Thank you for your time. I know it's about late dinner time for you at this point in India. So I appreciate you taking the time and speaking to our audience. Anybody who has any other questions, Abhishek Gupta, he's the co-founder of Pyrian Global.
Yeah, I think, Atin, thanks a lot for kind of inviting me and giving me this opportunity to kind of share my experiences and my insights. I believe and I hope that it would have been useful for the audiences over here, but would be really, really happy to kind of address any follow-up questions, anything which comes across, not only very, very specific to audits in attestation review work, but in risk advisory space or in accounting space. In case if you come across any questions, feel free to kind of shoot out those questions to me. Nathan has already given an introduction. I kind of co-founded Pyrian Global with a kind of an objective to bring the specialized services to the tier 1, tier 2 CPA firms in North America. And the expectation from our side is absolutely clear that we just want to kind of make sure that we are providing the right quality services to our clients. So I'm sure that we can share my credentials, my email ID with all of you, so that at least you can shoot out your questions to us.
I'm going to close the loop on this today, and it's a Friday. It's a Sunday morning for us, and Abhishek and I are going to go and enjoy the rest of our Sunday. This one has been a tremendous conversation, and a lot of really good things were said, and hopefully this was meaningful to every one of you. Abhishek, thank you again for the opportunity to speak with you, and have a wonderful rest of the Sunday.